Welcome back to Corporate Queens. Today is Tuesday and we're talking about telephone techniques and telemarketing. Our special court advisor is Jo Ann Kirby from KRG Communications. Jo Ann, can you tell us a little bit about telemarketing and telephone techniques in reference to impressions and perceptions?
I'd be more than happy to, Dawn. You know, one of the interesting things today in terms of marketing businesses is that everyone is so concerned with their brand. They want to make sure that they have a brand message, that their website reflects their brand, that their literature reflects their brand. When their salespeople go out, it reflects their brand. But what a lot of people tend to forget is that anyone who has contact with anyone in their organization, that person in the organization is also reflecting the brand as well. Whether you're in sales and inside sales, whether you're in customer service, whether you are in billing, whether you're in IT, every time you pick up the telephone, you're reflecting your company's brand. And a lot of times that tends to get neglected in organizations. One of the things with managing your perceptions is to understand that just as we create an impression when we talk face-to-face with someone through our attire, through our body language, when we pick up the telephone, we're also making the same kind of impression. So we need to ask ourselves, are we making the best impressions possible? For example, we tend to get very sloppy these days answering the telephone, and that's really a result of this whole, we have a cell phone, everybody's in our cell phone, we know who's coming in, and we're very sloppy about how we pick up a telephone. Well, when we're in an organization, the last thing we should do is, pick up the telephone and say, well, what's up? You want to pick up the phone and you want to answer the phone correctly, and the best way to do that is by using your first and last name, and I like to use the phrase, how may I help you? I don't like to say, may I help you? I always like to say, how may I help you? Because if you get, may I help you? You may get a story for 20 minutes. If you say, how may I help you? You've now focused yourself. So, for example, when someone calls me in my office, I would pick up the telephone and I would say, Jo Ann Kirby speaking, how may I help you today? And that helps extend your brand as being a professional. It helps you as the person on the phone find out quickly and easily what the person's situation is, and everybody's very happy. The other thing we want to keep in mind also is our hold techniques. If we're going to put somebody on hold, the appropriate thing to do would be to ask permission. Not everybody has time to spend all day on the telephone, but to just say to somebody, I got to put you on hold, and you're on hold, you might also have a disconnected phone there. What you want to do is, I say to someone, I need to, check this out. I want to make sure the information I'm giving you is correct. Are you able to hold? Most of the time people will say yes, or if they can't, you can arrange a time to call back that's appropriate for them, and everybody's happy. And again, you're extending the idea of your professional brand because you're treating the people you're dealing with appropriately and correctly. And that works both for inbound and outbound calls. No matter why you're speaking to a person, you want to make sure you're using the best techniques possible. You want to make sure that you do your follow-up appropriately. For example, if someone has, you're doing a sales call and you have to call them back for something, you want to make sure that if you said you're going to call them back tomorrow at 2, you do in fact call them back tomorrow at 2. If you are, customer service person and you realize you need some information, and you say, I'm going to call you, it's going to take me about 24 or 48 hours to get back to you, you should always get back to them, even if you don't have the information, just to touch base and make sure that people are, aware that you are taking care of them and that they are, appropriate for them. You want to make sure that your voice is modulated appropriately. Talking all high and squeaky on the phone with people. Okay, at the same time, you don't want to do anything false. In fact, a lot of people used to have that radio announcer's voice on the telephone. It's so fake. Be yourself. I do a lot of work with people who always ask me about accents. Is it a problem having an accent on the phone? And it really isn't. The problem is when I don't understand your accent on the telephone. In fact, if I have an accent, sometimes I'm actually more memorable than if I did not have that accent. So accents can actually work for you and not against you on the phone. But again, it comes down to, am I understandable? So your voice is important. Is there a clarity of expression? Do I understand what it is you're telling me? Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and you know you were both speaking the same language, but you had no idea what that person was talking about? And that happens a lot in companies that use a lot of buzzwords and a lot of technical terms that not everybody would be aware of. So, keep in mind who your audience is. Keep in mind who you're going to be talking to. Some people will understand you, and that's great, but other people will not. So you do want to be able to break things down without them feeling like a fool, by the way. You want to break it down so that everybody can understand you, and you can achieve your objective there. And all of these things there really are what helps extend your brand, because by using the best techniques, you really show that you're professional, that you care about people, and it really helps you to achieve your objectives and achieve your customers' objectives more easily.
So how important is it to be consistent in all departments when answering the phone?
Well, that's really important, and I think a lot of companies make mistakes by just doing telephone training for customer service or sales. Really, everybody who has a phone in their office should have some basics as to how the company expects them to answer the telephone, what the appropriate call techniques are, transferring calls. What is the appropriate technique they want you to use for transferring calls? Is it, do they expect you to stay on the line and introduce the person to the next party that you're transferring them to? Or is it okay to simply put your customer on hold, transfer the call, have the person that you're transferring to pick up, give them a little bit of a brief introduction, and then hang up as you transfer and not have to do an introduction. There are a number of different ways that you can transfer calls appropriately, but you want to make sure that people are aware of that. You want to make sure that people are aware of what's expected of them in terms of following up on something, regardless of what the situation is. So it really is important that regardless of the department, whether they're in the warehouse, whether they're in information technology, whether they're in human resources, everyone really should be using the same techniques across the board for a cohesive image.
And what recommendations would you have for leaving or for their voicemails, their introduction voicemails when someone gets them?
Well, it depends upon what the purpose is. For example, if someone is making an outgoing call and they have to leave a voicemail, you want to make sure that you have given your name, given your telephone number, a brief message, and I always tell people to repeat numbers. And again, sometimes people say, well, why am I giving a number? It shows up. Well, you're making an awful lot of assumptions about the phone systems that you're calling into. Not everybody will have caller ID. Not everybody, if you're calling somebody in their home, not everybody, is using a cell phone. So you need to make sure that you do leave the message and you do leave the number. And the other thing to keep in mind too is when you leave the number, slow down. It's so funny. If I ask a room full of people, has anybody ever gotten a voicemail message that they didn't understand? Everybody's hand goes up. Okay. Well, if we're all getting those messages, we're all giving those messages. So it's our name, our phone number, our message. Now, if I'm in sales and I am leaving a voicemail for someone I'd like to sell to, I want to make sure that I've planned out my message in advance, and it should be something to pique someone's interest and generate enough interest that that person will either A, be willing to return my telephone call, or B, when I do call back, because I don't make the assumption that somebody is going to call me back when I leave a voicemail message, but if I do call back, they'll be inclined to speak with me. I won't have turned them off completely. So that's something that I do want to practice in advance.
Now, what about if I'm a customer that's calling into a company and I get a voicemail message? What do you recommend is placed on that voicemail message?
Okay. You want to make sure, again, you leave your name.
Well, not myself calling. You're going to get my voicemail message. So what are you hearing on that end?
I should hear who I'm speaking to, who I've reached, what department that they're from. If they are out of the office for the day, you really should go in and change your voicemail message to reflect that. If you're on vacation, your voicemail message should reflect that as well as who they should call instead. you want Susie at extension 1400 if I'm on vacation, or you want it, if I'm out to lunch, perhaps you should be speaking to John, who's covering for me. He's at extension 2. So you do want to leave that kind of information on that. So again, your name, what your department is, and if you're not available, it should say so.
Any other tidbits if they are available and they're in the office that day, or maybe they're in a meeting, or?
Well, you should check your voicemail. I like to say 2 to 3 times a day. You should check it mid-morning. You should check it around lunchtime. You can check it late in the afternoon. I think that just makes sense to do that. We've developed into a society where we expect everything immediately.
Absolutely.
And particularly if somebody's calling a sales department, they don't get you, they've moved on to the next provider. So you're potentially losing a sales opportunity the longer you wait to return a telephone call. So you do want to get back to people as quickly as you can.
Perfect. And Jo Ann, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your business?
Okay. Well, Dawn, KRG Communications Group specializes in helping people to use the telephone to increase their business and increase their customer service results. And what I do is I do training and development. I do consulting work. For example, I'll go into a client's organization and help them set up an inside sales unit or a lead generating unit. I might go in and look at some of the policies and procedures that they're using and show them how, making some changes, maybe sometimes even some minor tweaks, we can help get better. We can help get better results. I also do supervisory training and management training. A number of times I'll go into an organization and find out that the problem really isn't the sales reps; it's the managers and supervisors and how they're interacting with people. In fact, they often say that a lot of people, when they leave a job, they don't leave a job; they leave their boss. So,
okay.
So I work with that as well because you really do need to look at the whole picture.
And how can we get in touch with you?
There are a number of ways you can get in touch with me. You can always give me a call. I love phone calls. My telephone number is 973-709-1252. Again, that's 973-709-1252. Or if you think about this and it's 11 o'clock at night, it's not necessary to call me at 11 o'clock at night. You can email me at jkirby@krgcommunications.com, and you will get a quick response from me.